In this edition of the Bucs MinuteCast, is Ryan Jensen going to come back to this team sooner than we first thought? We'll talk about what are the odds of the Bucs winning against the Panthers this weekend. And then the big news is that Todd Bowles says he will not ask Bruce Arians to fix the offense. Why would anyone think that he would have to go to Bruce Arians in the first place? Let's dig into that next on this edition of the Bucs MinuteCast.
MinuteCast Media.
10,000!
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers MinuteCast starts right now.
Bucs on 3, 1, 2, 3, Bucs! This is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers MinuteCast.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of the Bucs MinuteCast. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms. You can find this podcast on The Bucs Report. Check them out online, bucsreport.com. You can find it on YouTube. Just search for The Bucs Report. And of course, you can find this podcast wherever you find your audio podcasts. Just search for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers MinuteCast and hit that follow or subscribe button. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Bucs MinuteCast. So just to get it going here right off the top is kind of some bigger news, I guess, is that Bucs coach Todd Bowles won't ask Bruce Arians to fix the offense. This is my team, not Bruce's team. We talk all the time, but you don't jumpstart the offense by asking a former coach what to do. It's a bit of an interesting thing there. I can understand his perspective. I hate to insert the race card into it, but would he have asked, if say for some reason that the head coach of the Bucs right now had the same record and was doing the same thing, would they have, in turn said, would you ask Bruce Arians for help? I just think that, to a certain extent, it has bad optics, and I don't like the way it looks. The Bucs are on the forefront of having, multiple black coaches and women on the coaching staff. So for the questions to start circulating when they ask Todd Bowles, hey, Todd Bowles, do you think you should ask Bruce Arians for help? I just don't think that looks good. And you have to kind of start to look at the person that's doing that story and say, why would you even ask him that question? I think that Todd Bowles is more than, capable of taking this team where it has to go. They are off to a rough start. But do I think it's his fault? Sure. I mean, I think it factors in to a certain extent. Bowles and Leftwich are two of the big coaches on the team. And I think, they're doing the best with what they have. There are a lot of injuries on this team that no one really had anticipated. I don't think at the beginning of the season, they didn't see the injuries to Jensen, and you didn't see the injury to Godwin and Evans missing some time, and amongst multiple other players. Those are just the ones off the top of my head. So there's a lot of things at play here. Also, the play of Tom Brady. Tom Brady, let's face it, he is the GOAT. He is the greatest of all time, but he hasn't, in fact, lived up to who he is. He's, a lot of his passes are short. A lot of them miss their target. He would blame, they're running the wrong route. And at the end of the day, when he was yelling at Hainsey and the other guys on the sideline, I think that it was Wirfs or Tryon Shoyinka sitting next to him. It's bad optics to be yelling at the guys that are protecting you and saying that you're not doing a good enough job when, in fact, he hasn't been doing a good enough job, truth be told. And I know, everyone's like, how dare you say something disparaging about Tom Brady? There's a lot of moving parts in his life, his marriage. If you listen to, the different radio shows and podcasts and what you read on Twitter and the like, they say that his marriage is on the rocks. And, there's a lot of people pointing to, why did he miss a practice to go to Kraft's wedding? Why did he miss a bunch of practice time in preseason to go on a family vacation? Is that the reason that Tom Brady, the guy that has won 7 Super Bowls, is that the reason why his production is down It's to some of the worst levels it's been in years. There's the other thing that he is just getting older. He's 45 years old. I mean, he's not going to continue to play the same way he always has. And, to a certain extent, I'm glad he did come back for this season. Don't get me wrong, but a little bit of Monday morning quarterback or armchair quarterbacking here. I think that ultimately he may have been better to just retire at the end of last season. I would rather go out on a high note. And you're saying a high note. They didn't win a Super Bowl. I get that, but he still went out with his team playing well, all things considered. Now, there is a chance this Bucs team could turn it around and make a really solid push the rest of the way out. They are playing a Carolina Panthers team that is quite horrible. So if they cannot find a way to beat the Panthers, then I think that you really start to have to kind of look for the panic button and, maybe get your finger on it, ready to push it. Because, I think that, if you can't beat these teams that are horrible, how do you ever expect to play to beat some of the best in the league? Because at the end of the day, that is what you're going to have to do if you want to win a Super Bowl. That's great that you beat a team that's really poor. But if you want to win the ultimate prize, you have to beat the really good teams out there. That is your Packers and the Rams and whoever ends up being in the top of the league at the end of the season. So that is what I'm talking about. Let's just hope that they can turn it around before it's a little bit too late here. All right, in the next segment here, we are going to talk about Ryan Jensen. And Ryan Jensen was one of the guys that kind of started this all off in the very beginning of, everyone said that this Bucs team is stacked and they're in such a good position. And they were, they made some big offseason acquisitions and Julio Jones and Russell Gage and that kind of thing. This team is going to be the team to beat. That's what everyone said. And then Ryan Jensen got injured in what I'm going to call a fluke accident. Two guys vying for positions on this team. One of them kind of pushed the other guy into the side of his knee and it twisted. And Ryan Jensen screamed a bunch of four-letter words because he knew at that moment, based on the amount of pain that he was in, that it was going to be the end of his season. And what the common thought then is that based on the injury, that he would most likely be done for the rest of the season. But then all of a sudden there was these articles that were starting to break talking about, could Ryan Jensen come back earlier than first anticipated? And ultimately, is Ryan Jensen going to be enough to turn this team around? That is the question. This is an article in the Bucs Wire. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers were dealt a devastating blow on just the second day of training camp this year when Pro Bowl center Ryan Jensen went down with a serious knee injury that threatened to end his season before it even began. Despite the grim prognosis, the Bucs have held out hope that Jensen would be able to return at some point later this season, perhaps in the playoffs. Earlier this week, longtime NFL reporter Jason Cole indicated that Jensen could return as early as Week 9 against the LA Rams. That's far ahead of what the first predictions were. When asked about that report on Wednesday, Bucs head coach Todd Bowles didn't sound like someone who expected Jensen to make that quick of a turnaround. To me, it seems like Jason Cole is trying to create a bit of rumor mill out there to generate, traffic to his website or his podcast, whatever he has. As far as I know, he's still limping and hobbled, Bowles said. I can't tell how he's going to heal. He's walking better, and that's the best I can tell you. I don't know when he'll be back. I would be surprised if we see Ryan Jensen before the end of the season. I don't think that Jason Cole has any kind of inside track on Ryan Jensen. Again, I think he's just trying to create some buzz for his article or his blog or his podcast, whatever he is. I'm not too familiar with him, to be honest. The interior of Tampa Bay's offensive line has struggled for much of the season, thanks in large part to missing Jensen and fellow Pro Bowler Ali Marpet, who retired this offseason. While it's still possible that Jensen could return at some point this season, Week 9 seems like a fool's hope. I agree with that assessment. And Rick Stroud, he is one of the best guys that covers this team, along with Greg Auman. I kind of looked at them and they said, according to all the data that we have, that's not possible. I don't know where he is getting his information from. Like I talked about a couple times, I think that ultimately he's trying to create some buzz for whatever, platform he's trying to push. But I don't think that Cole has any sort of inside track as to the status of Ryan Jensen. Would I love Ryan Jensen to come back early? Sure. but I wouldn't put my hopes in that. All right, in the next segment here, we are going to talk about the outlook for the Bucs at Panthers. Again, this is a must-win game, of course, but this is one of the games that they call a trap game. You go in and you're like, well, I know that we had a hard time against the Steelers, and I know we had a hard time against the Chiefs and the Packers and the Saints. Even though they won some of those games, they weren't won, convincingly, shall we say. So they go in and they play a Carolina Panthers team that is horrible. It is a dumpster fire that is burning out of control. Can the Buccaneers, change their fortune and get back into the win column? I guess it remains to be seen. This article in The Athletic: when the Carolina Panthers host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday, it'll be a battle between NFC South foes who could both desperately benefit from a win. Unsurprisingly, the Bucs are likelier to do so, so they're more than a 10-point favorite against Carolina, but the Bucs were favored by more than a touchdown before losing to the Steelers Sunday, and that was a mess out there against the Steelers. Everyone favored the Bucs to win that game. And it was a tough game to watch. Let's just be honest there. There's a lot going on in Carolina, and none of it leads to production on the football field. When the Panthers host the Buccaneers, at 1 p.m., they'll be down to an interim coach and third-string quarterback. They'll also be tasked with outplaying the division's best team of the past couple of seasons while they potentially remain in the mix to deal with the best player, Christian McCaffrey. Even if the task of the Panthers defeating the Bucs is tall, Pittsburgh handed the Bucs a surprising loss just a week ago to show that the task isn't impossible to achieve. And wouldn't that be a great feather in the Panthers' hat to take down Tom Brady and the Buccaneers? I think it would be a good boost of morale for that team. But again, we really hope that doesn't happen. We hope that the Buccaneers can get it together and find a way to win. Take a look at the players on the field. You take Godwin and Evans and Brady and just it goes on and on. Devin White. It's pretty much an all-star team out there if you look at it for the most part. Why can they not find a way to put it together? That is the question, and they don't have a lot of time to figure it out. This 3-3 start to the season probably isn't what Tom Brady had envisioned back in the offseason when he ended his brief retirement. The Bucs offense is struggling mightily to find its way through 6 weeks, and there isn't much to be optimistic about. Another bad performance against this Panthers defense would be a cause of concern. And like I talked about, if the Bucs cannot find a way to beat the Panthers, then I really think you need to be a little bit panicked and a little bit concerned, because on paper, there is absolutely no reason why they should not beat this struggling team. They were talking about they're missing coaches and they're on their third string quarterback. They got to find a way to win, and this is the last season with Brady on the Bucs. This is the last season of Brady in the NFL. You think he'd want to go out on a high note, and if you take a look at it, he just looks rattled in his head. He was out at the last press conference. He was wearing like a sweatshirt and with his hat on and his arms folded the whole time. That's not the normal Tom Brady that we're used to seeing. We're used to seeing a well-groomed Tom Brady and, with his hair just combed perfectly and, some designer clothes that he's wearing and giving the perfect answers confidently. So there's definitely something afoot with Tom Brady, whether it be his shoulder, his arm, or his hand, or his personal life. I do think that there's a lot going on in Tom Brady's head right now. I think a lot of it has to do with how he's playing on the field, the poor production, but I do think, it's more internal things, like the issues with his wife. He retired and came back for this Bucs team, which is lacking in the luster department, shall we say, for this. And if this Bucs team, for whatever reason, doesn't make it to the playoffs, he's got to be asking himself a lot of questions. Did I risk my marriage? Did I risk my legacy for this Bucs team that did not perform? A lot of that blame he could put on himself. Of course, he's the quarterback of the team. But was it worth it? At the end of the day, was it worth it for Brady to come back if, in fact, this Bucs team falls short? A lot's going to be determined in the next couple of weeks. This football season is so very short. You take a look at baseball and hockey and those kind of things where the seasons are so long that you can have a poor part of the season and then turn it around and do okay. But the NFL season is so short that if you have a few bad games, that can be curtains for you. That can be the rest of it, and that's going to be the legacy of Tom Brady on this Bucs team in the NFL. Is he kind of went out in a whimper? That's not what I want. I know that's not what he wants. I know that's not what the Bucs want. There's a lot of uncertainty around this team. Who's going to be the QB on this team next year? Is Gabbert? Could Gabbert, if you inserted him right now, could he do a better job? Nah. Trask? Definitely not. Who is going to be the magic player? What's going to be the magic element to take this Bucs team into the promised land of winning another Super Bowl? We all thought on paper he's going to come back and this Bucs team is going to win another Super Bowl. But to quote Todd Bowles, the players that are living on former glories, they need to stop doing that because, we're a couple years removed from the Bucs winning the Super Bowl, and it's a lot of different players out there. You're missing some integral pieces from that team. You look at your Gronkowski out there. You look at Ndamukong Suh. You look at Ali Marpet. All these guys that are no longer on the team. So it's not an apples for apples comparison out there. And then you couple that with the fact that Godwin and just the wide receivers in general have not been living up to potential. The run game that's been, all Leonard Fournette, he is a big machine out there just plowing through people, but he cannot do it alone. You've seen some bright points of Rachaad White, who I think is going to be a bright spot in the Bucs future, but there's a lot of different guys out there that, I wonder what they're doing out there. The punt return is horrible. It has been the last couple years. 9 times out of 10, I think they would just be better to say fair catch. I got the football, fair catch. Let's just start it. Because usually they end up on the 10-yard line, and you're like, well, what the hell did you do that for? You could at least flag down a fair catch and had good field position. There's a lot of things to work on this team. And again, I hope they can figure it out. They don't have a lot of time to do it. But again, a must-win Sunday. That's not a novel thing to say. That's not like, wow, that's a bold prediction. They must win Sunday. This is the litmus test for this team. If they find a way to screw it up on Sunday, then I think you might want to pack up your Super Bowl flag and put it in mothballs for a while, because we don't know when we're going to be busting that out for a while. I know that there's a lot of people drinking the Brady Kool-Aid on this team, and, he's going to do it. He's going to take us, and he might. I really hope that he can. But from what I'm seeing on the field as of right now, I just don't see it. At this moment right now, I don't see it. This team is not firing on all cylinders. So unless they have, some players that they add to the lineup to change what this team looks like. I was listening to the Rick Stroud podcast, Good Day Tampa Bay or whatever it's called, and he was saying, what was one of the linchpins for the Bucs turning it around last season, or the season before, was with Antonio Brown coming back. And he said, don't turn off the show. He goes, I know that he had a lot of personal problems, but that was one of the offensive infusions that the Buccaneers had, was adding Antonio Brown, despite his crazy antics in the end zone against the Jets, where he walked off the field. For the games that he did play, he played very well. The Bucs need another Antonio Brown minus the drama baggage. So whoever that may be, they need something to jumpstart this team that is lacking in just their identity and who they are before it's too late. That's what I'm talking about. So just to wrap up this whole show, must win Sunday. Don't fall into the trap game. It's easy to do that. You got a lot of great players out there. I know we're missing the big ones like Gronkowski. We would love Gronk back on this team right now, because you look at Cameron Brate and you look at Kyle Rudolph out there. None of them are really kind of, living up to their quote unquote potential. All right. Once again, thank you for joining me on this edition of the Bucs MinuteCast, and I'll talk to you again next time.